There is one place in your birth chart that doesn't necessarily show what comes naturally to you. It shows what life keeps making you work for, again, and again, and again. That place is Saturn. And if you've ever looked around and wondered, why is this particular part of my life so much harder than it seems to be for everybody else? Your Saturn placement is one of the first places an astrologer might look, because astrologically, Saturn is connected with time, responsibility, boundaries, discipline, fear, structure, and maturity. But I don't want you to think of Saturn as some planet sitting in the sky waiting to punish you. That's the least useful interpretation. Think of Saturn more like the part of the chart where shortcuts don't work. You can avoid the lesson, delay it, blame someone else, try to go around it. But eventually, life brings you back to the same classroom. Different person, different job, different year, same lesson. And that's why understanding your Saturn house can be incredibly interesting. The sign Saturn occupies describes something about how you deal with Saturnian themes, but the house must tells you where in life those themes tend to show up. So find Saturn in your birth chart, look at the house number, and let's go through them. If Saturn is in your first house, the classroom is you, identity, confidence, how you occupy space, how comfortable you are being seen as yourself. People with this placement may feel like they had to mature early, or that expressing themselves naturally came with pressure. There can be a strange self-consciousness. You don't simply enter the room. Part of you watches yourself entering the room. Am I doing this correctly? How do I look? What do they think? But over time, the same placement that can create hesitation can also build enormous self-command. Your lesson isn't becoming somebody impressive. It's becoming somebody solid enough that you no longer need constant permission to exist. If Saturn is in the second house, pay attention to money, security, and self-worth. This doesn't automatically mean poverty. That's too simplistic. It can mean that security is something you take very seriously. Money may feel heavy. Saving may feel necessary. Losing resources may activate deep fear. Or you might spend years trying to prove your value through what you own, earn, or accomplish. The repeating lesson is often, what am I worth when the external number changes? This placement can become extremely capable with resources precisely because it refuses to treat security casually. But first, it often has to separate having value from now having valuables. Third house Saturn brings the lesson into communication, speaking, learning, writing, being understood. You may think much more carefully before you speak than other people realize. There can be fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of sounding stupid, or the experience of not being listened to early enough that silence became safer. But Saturn doesn't necessarily remove the voice. Sometimes it forces you to build one, slowly, deliberately, until the person who once feared speaking becomes the person whose words carry unusual weight. Fourth house Saturn takes us into home, family, and emotional foundations. This is one of those placements where home may never have felt completely simple. Responsibility can arrive early. Family expectations can feel heavy. Or emotional safety may become something you have to build consciously rather than something you automatically inherited. The repeating lesson is often about creating your own foundation, not just a house, a place internally where you can stop preparing for everything to collapse. Fifth house Saturn touches creativity, romance, joy, and self-expression. And this is an interesting contradiction, because the fifth house wants to play. Saturn wants to take things seriously. So you may censor your own creativity, judge your own work before anyone else sees it. Turn hobbies into performance. Turn dating into evaluation. Turn pleasure into something you have to earn. The lesson? Joy doesn't always need to justify itself. Not everything valuable has to become productive. Sixth house Saturn brings the classroom into work, routines, health habits, and responsibility. You may be extremely dependable. The person people call because they know you'll handle it. And that sounds like a compliment. Until your entire identity becomes, I handle everything. Then responsibility turns into burden. The lesson here is often learning that discipline should support your life, not consume it. Structure is useful. Martyrdom isn't. Now we reach the seventh house. Relationships, partnership, commitment. This is one people often fear when they first discover it. Don't. Saturn in the 7th doesn't mean you're doomed in love. Astrologically, Saturn tends to make the area serious. Relationships may teach you through responsibility, boundaries, delays, difficult choices, or very important commitments. You may attract partners who force you to understand exactly what partnership means to you. And the lesson is usually deeper than find somebody. It's learn how to build something with another person without abandoning yourself. 8th house. Saturn goes into territory people often prefer not to discuss. Shared money, trust, vulnerability, intimacy, loss, control. What happens when you cannot keep everything separate and self-contained? This placement can create enormous caution about dependency. You may want closeness and simultaneously fear what somebody could do once they have access to the parts of you that aren't protected. The lesson is not blind trust. It's learning the difference between vulnerability and surrendering your power. 9th house Saturn puts pressure on beliefs, education, meaning, travel, worldview. You may spend years asking questions other people seem content not to ask. What do I actually believe? Who taught me this? Is this true, or did I inherit it? Sometimes formal education feels restrictive. Sometimes there's a deep need to prove intellectual legitimacy. But eventually, this placement can build something powerful, a philosophy that has been tested rather than simply inherited. 10th house Saturn is one of the most visible placements because the 10th house deals with career, reputation, and public achievement. And yes, ambition can be strong here, but so can the feeling of never having done enough. You may compare yourself constantly, feel behind, carry enormous responsibility, or spend years building something whose results seem painfully slow. This is classic Saturn territory. Slow doesn't necessarily mean wrong. The lesson is learning to build authority rather than perform success, because public recognition without internal structure becomes another prison. 11th house Saturn takes us into friendship, community, belonging, and long-term goals. You may feel different from groups, older than people your age, more selective socially, or you may spend years trying to fit into communities that never quite feel like home. The lesson can involve understanding that belonging doesn't mean being accepted everywhere. Sometimes maturity is discovering which rooms you're no longer willing to shrink yourself to remain inside. And finally, Saturn in the 12th house. This is the hidden room. Fear that doesn't always have a clear name. Solitude, the unconscious, private burdens, the parts of yourself you hide even from yourself. You may be extremely functional externally while carrying an internal weight nobody sees. And because the 12th house operates behind the scenes, the pattern can be difficult to identify. You just know something feels heavy. The lesson here often involves building structure around the invisible. Silence, rest, reflection, spiritual life, mental boundaries. Learning that what cannot be seen can still require attention. Now here's what matters. Don't hear one of these descriptions and decide, that's my destiny. That's not how I would use a birth chart. Saturn isn't a sentence, it's information. And Saturn's house isn't the entire interpretation either. The sign matters. Its aspects to other planets matter. The ruler of the house matters. The rest of the chart can completely change how that Saturn is experienced. That's why two people can both have Saturn in the 7th house and have dramatically different relationship histories. Or two people with Saturn in the 10th can have completely different careers. The chart is a system, not a collection of fortune cookie definitions. But Saturn gives you an extremely useful question to start with. Where does life keep asking me to become more mature than I want to be? Think about your answer. Relationships, money, confidence, family, career, trust, communication, belonging? Now ask, what lesson keeps returning there? Because this is the part people miss. The circumstances change, but sometimes the lesson doesn't. Different relationship, same inability to set the boundary, different employer, same fear of authority, different financial situation, same panic around security, different creative project, same fear of being judged. Saturn becomes useful when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this repeatedly requiring me to build? A boundary, patience, confidence, discipline, self-respect, a stronger foundation, a voice, the ability to commit, the ability to let go? That's where astrology becomes much more interesting than prediction. Because instead of asking what Saturn is going to do to you, you're asking what this area of your life is trying to develop in you. And if you want to understand your Saturn in the context of the rest of your natal chart, that's exactly why a complete birth chart reading is different from looking up one placement online. Your Saturn doesn't exist alone. Neither does your moon, your Venus, your ascendant, or any other placement. They interact. And sometimes the reason one part of your life feels contradictory becomes obvious only when you see the full chart together. I've linked the personalized birth chart reading below if you want me to map yours. But before you go anywhere, find your Saturn house and ask yourself one question. What keeps happening here until I finally respond differently? Because that may be the real Saturn lesson. Not punishment, not bad luck. A pattern asking you to become strong enough that you no longer need to repeat it.